an assistant has to be good at many things. An assistant needs to be observant. You really need to be able to put others first, but not in a way that you sacrifice your own values or who you are. You have to be happy as a person who likes to help others, because there's not a lot of room for your own needs in the classroom. But if you enjoy working with children in that way, you can see that the way that you help set up the environment, the way that you help manage any disputes in the classroom or any problems in the classroom really does foster their development. And so it can be very rewarding in that way. What I really noticed when I came into the Montessori environment was that the children are in charge. It's their environment. They feel responsible for it. They feel responsible for their learning.
You can get that?
I can do it.
I think she can do it, Wataru. Thank you, though.
And the adults in the room are just there to help them follow their own path. And so you get the sense of children being responsible for themselves, but also learning to be responsible for one another and for the whole classroom. So there's a tremendous synergy that develops, even though children get to develop at their own pace. They get to work together and watch each other and take care of each other too. It's really important to understand that the classroom environment needs to be beautiful, because that's one thing that really distinguishes Montessori education from other methods, which is not to say other classrooms aren't beautiful, but it's so important for children to be in a beautiful environment, because in the environment which is like this, which is spare but has beautiful things to work with, children are inspired to do the work. They want to do it. They want to put their hands on this work. They can't wait to do it. So it develops a lot of eagerness and curiosity in them, which is exactly what the spirit we want to develop in them when they're young and continuing. And they can't do beautiful work unless they see it modeled for them, or unless that's a value that's in the classroom. So if you have a classroom that isn't beautiful, children can't strive to achieve beauty as easily in their own work. So I think it's really important for them to hold that even as a young child when they don't have the dexterity maybe to make things beautiful, because it will serve them later. When I first came in the room, I think I made a pretty big statement, and the directors asked me to just sit back for a while and watch, and that was really helpful, because the room is really for the children, it's not for the adults. We're just there to help them get their work done. So I like to think of myself really almost as a wallflower, just kind of fading into the background. I don't want them to notice me when I'm walking around. I like to walk quietly, and I never talk to children when they are doing their work. I never want to interrupt them, because what they're developing at this age is a sense of concentration and focus, which they already have. But if you interrupt them, it takes away from the value they're getting from the work they're doing. So it's not fair to them. And if I don't understand what they're doing, or if I'm interested, I can always talk with the directress at the end of the day, and she can explain to me how to use it. So, and when I talk with children, I often will squat down so I'm at their eye level, and I speak quietly so that we don't disturb the rest of the children, but that they feel that they're getting the one-on-one attention that they need at that time. And then when the conversation is done, I'll stand up and they can move on to whatever next work they're going to do. And once you figure out the style of your directress, it's also good to know how you might complement that style for the children. So if you have a directress who is very fun-loving and kind of buoyant and big, children might appreciate you not being big in that way, having a big personality, but being quieter. Or if you have a director or directress who's very serious and focused, the children might like someone who's a little bit more fun-loving. Not that you'll get a lot of room for that in the classroom, but out on the playground or times when you can socialize more with the children. It's nice to have a balance for the children. I like to go around the room and look at all the shelves and take a closer look to see if things are getting dirty because they've been handled. Sometimes kids come in from the playground and don't wash their hands as they should, or things just tend to get dirty when there's a lot of use. So I like to do cleaning, and then that's a time when I can see, are we running out of things, say for the practical life area for polishing? Is there enough polish? Are there enough cotton balls or things to polish with? How are the actual materials that they're polishing? Are they in good shape? Did something get broken and we didn't know about it until just now? So I want to make sure that the room is as beautiful as it can be. We like to keep it beautiful as if it's always that way, but really it starts beautiful and then you're always kind of lifting it back up to its beauty at the end of the day. And so for some of the writing shelves for the metal inset work, there might be paper and making sure the pencils are sharpened for the children. And just checking in other areas, even for the paper towels for children to dry their hand, or the bathroom stocked with toilet paper. Is there Kleenex out? All of these little things, if they come during the day and children don't have what they need, then it gets in the way of them being able to smoothly go about their work. So I really like to make sure the room is as perfect as possible before I leave. And that way when I come in the morning and the directress comes in and the children come in, we're ready to go. There's nothing left to do and we can start the day in a relaxed and positive way. I get here early enough, about a half an hour before the children come, so I could take care of any business in the office, respond to any memos that I've received, and then come in here and prepare a snack, look around at the shelves to make sure that what's there is needed, do any cleaning that needs to happen, that just in case it didn't happen the night before when we left the classroom, and then get ready for the children to come. Hopefully, if a child comes early, try to take care of them and make sure they get into before school care. And as the children come in, I'm either at the door greeting them and helping them get their shoes off and hang up their coat, or I'm out greeting the parent and walking them in. So we either choose one role or we share those roles, the directress and I. It's a good chance to get a read on the children and see, how is this child doing today? Sometimes you can tell immediately that the child is having a great day. They come bouncing in and they look great and they're full of energy. It's a good chance in the morning to just see where they're at. So if they come to you later in the day and say, I don't feel well, or I'm really tired, you'll already be sensitive to the fact that they came in that way. Whereas if you have a child that comes bouncing in and then 15 minutes later, maybe is feeling hungry, they want snack, that's a different situation. And then once the children get in the room, then I'm trying to keep a backdoor pace, not trying to tell kids what to do, but just watch and see what's happening and see where I can be useful. If a child needs help getting an activity together, doing some work, I might help them, or I might just wait for a while and see what I need to do. And then around 10:30 we start cleaning up and getting ready for circle time and to go outside. And so that's, usually we get to go outside, and so that's helping children with their clothes, getting that back together, and observing on the playground as we go outside, making sure that they're being safe as well as having fun. Then when we come back into the room, I help get lunch ready, clean the tables off, help the children with their school lunches if they need, certain things open, like their milk or their juice containers. Then I usually try to catch up with the directress at that point over lunch, and we talk about what's happened so far if we haven't had a chance to touch base, because sometimes she gets busy doing her work and I get busy doing my work, and we may need to confer about a certain child who's having a hard day or anything we want to be aware of in the afternoon. Then we help clean up after lunch, and I bring the children down to the nap room after they've gone to the bathroom and washed their hands, and I supervise the nap room. I either stay with the children if they're continuing to nap past the half an hour, or I come back into the room with them and and continue assisting. Then I get them ready to go home in the same way, get their shoes on, get their coats, and work with the directress to make sure that that happens smoothly. And if there's any administrative business from the office, make sure that notes go home with children or those things get handled. Help maintain the environment for the children. That could be the physical environment, making sure there are supplies on the shelves, making sure that things are available for the children, making sure snack is there.
Were you the last person to do painting?
She scribbled
You
in
need
the
to finish cleaning up. Look at all the water on the floor and the water's still in the bucket.
Yeah.
You need to clean that up.
It's also the learning environment that they're partially responsible for. So if there's a disruption in the classroom or if a child's having a problem, that's the assistant's role to step in and manage that so that the directress or director can actually be teaching lessons and not have to manage all the children at the same time. Usually I'm looking just to make sure there's no problems with the children. Sometimes they might have an accident or there might be a dispute with another child about who gets to do a particular work. So I'm always on the lookout for that. And the room is not perfectly quiet. There's children doing work, and so you have to listen to the noise to see if it's a normal working noise or if there's chaos somewhere.
You did? You know how that makes her feel. She was very sad. Now, what did you want to do?
Paint.
You wanted to do painting? Well, she's still cleaning the painting. So you're going to wait?
I think it's unfair. Even if I personally don't think it's unfair, I might say, boy, it sounds like you don't think that that's right or that that's fair. And then they know they've been heard, and then I can respond and say, here's what the rule is. The rule is that one person gets to go outside at a time, for example. And as soon as so-and-so comes back, that's when you can go outside. That's the rule in the classroom, and that's what the directress and I say is fair. So it's acknowledging them, it's explaining why the rules are, not as a big defense of here's why things are the way they are, but so that they understand that there's a reason for the rules that we have in the room. And they're pretty receptive to that, and they internalize it, and you can often hear them say, well, this is the rule for snack, or this is the rule for that. So they like that structure.
Do it again? Yeah.
The role of the teacher, the directress, that you're not the one leading all the time, it's that the children are really leading and that they're all going at their own pace. And so somehow you lead this group of children through the year and they're all going at their own pace, but there's also this synergy together because all of them are doing the work in the room and they get to watch each other and they get to learn from each other. So it's really more focused on children than other methods, I think.
Your work's not done? Why don't you sit at the table where your work's at and just rest for a minute? Maybe your stomach will stop hurting then. Well, you need to sit down in that chair. If you have workout, then you need to sit in that chair and just rest there. I'll come and check on you in a couple minutes.
One thing you sometimes end up doing is children will come to you and say, I don't feel good, my stomach hurts, I think I have a fever. And there are some children who like that as a way to get attention, and there are some children who are truly not feeling well. So you have to make decisions about how to handle that. And you always take the step of seeing if their forehead is hot and perhaps taking their temperature, or you might encourage them to go to the bathroom or eat, ask them if they've eaten anything that day if they say their stomach's hurting, to try and troubleshoot it early. But you always have to be aware and responsible for their health. Or in the playground, if they've run and they've fallen, to do a first aid check just to make sure, depending on what you see, that they aren't more badly hurt than they look. That's a really important safety issue for me, and children aren't always as sensitive to that as they need to be. They're pretty good about walking around each other's work, but sometimes they try to climb on the stool at the same time to get a drink of water at the drinking fountain, or might try to cut in front of line with each other no matter how much we try to structure it differently. So, and as a result of that, sometimes children may trip each other or fall or something happens. That's a good time for an assistant to be very observant and be watching, to be preventative. If there are two children climbing on a stool, make sure that one of them gets off. If there's a problem that comes up in the classroom and I know that I should talk to the director or directress, I first think, how important is the issue? If it's a little thing, then I might be tempted to wait until we have a minute during the day when she's not presenting and I can have her attention. If it's important or serious, or I really don't know what to do and something needs to happen, then I'll see where she is in the room, and if she's giving a lesson, I'll really ask myself again, do I need to interrupt right now? And I usually won't interrupt during a lesson because things can usually wait and the lesson is short. But after that, I might seek her out and speak to her quietly about what's happening. And other times, if things are not so important, or if there's just something I want to talk to her about that's not immediate, I'll wait until we're on the playground or at lunch. But even on the playground, you'd be surprised. There's always children to watch and things happening, so it's never that downtime you expect it to be. Or even at lunch, if children are not using their manners or something, you have to be aware of that, and you can't get all your needs taken care of. So we have a lot of times at the beginning of the day, during the breaks, at lunch, and at the end of the day we can catch up if we didn't have a chance to during the day. Sometimes, because things get kind of busy in the classroom, I might forget some things I needed to talk about until it comes up again. So when things come up during the day, I have a list and I just make a note for myself so that when I do get some time with a directress, I can cover the points quickly and I can be more efficient that way. I've only learned to do that because I usually forget what they are, so this way I remember and we're able to cover things well. It's difficult to get time during the day to get my own needs met in terms of making the phone calls I need to, just the routine, personal business that you have, getting an appointment with a dentist or something like that. You really need to work around the schedule of the school. So that was hard for me to get used to at first because I'd had an office job where I could slip out for a little while, and here you really have to be here every day. And even being sick, you feel like you don't want to be sick because you don't want to change the environment of the classroom if someone needs to come in and be a substitute for you. The children, I have substituted before for other assistants, and I noticed that the children are different when they don't have their usual adults around. It's a big distraction to them to have someone else in the room who has a different way of behaving and a different way of handling situations. And they also like to test you and see how you're going to respond to things, just to see if there's a little more wiggle room about some things. It's hard on the children to have different adults coming in, and that's why it's nice to be here every day and be very consistent, not only in the times you're here, but in the way that you're here, and be upbeat for them, and be emotionally consistent, and be consistent with your boundaries in terms of how you treat them and the support that you give them. I've done several things to make sure I can come in and be upbeat for the children and be able to focus on them, because it's easy to get run down when you're focusing on others all day and you don't really have even time to catch your breath sometimes, or going to the bathroom, and you have to make time in your day to make sure you get a chance to go to the bathroom sometimes. So I do exercise in the morning before I come to school, and I just find that gives me kind of a natural high, and it helps me be upbeat for the children and not sleepy. I also have my cup of coffee, so those two things are a good combination. And I like to read a lot. That's very relaxing for me in the evening. So between that and spending time with my husband, I make sure I make time for that, and that my school commitments and my other commitments don't get in the way of the things that make me feel like a good person to be with, and that I can be my best for the children.
And how about when we could go look at those as soon as we're done here?
Yes, that would be great.
We'll do that along with the material. The last thing is we're planning our pumpkin farm field trip.
Oh, great.
So that's going to be a lot of hard work. So there comes the
I've been
name
fortunate
tags
to
and
have a good
information.
working relationship with
So we need to
the
finish those
directresses
up
I've
before
worked with.
Wednesday so that we can go.
And I have had friends who have not been so fortunate, and what they've told me is that the room feels very chaotic to them, and I'm sure to the children, So it's very difficult when you haven't taken the time to address the issues you need to with your directress, or if for some reason you're not getting along and there's stress. It's not just between the two adults, it's like in a family. If you have children, if the parents aren't getting along, the children experience that. Similarly, when the adults in the room in a Montessori environment are having some friction, the children are very sensitive to that, and it will be harder for them to get their work done. And fortunately, the other is true too, that if there's two adults have a really positive working relationship, then the children really benefit from that, because there's a lot of synergy that develops out of that relationship between the adults. And the children are sensitive to what adults, whether they're getting along or not, and they're going to be comfortable and more happy if the adults are getting along well in the environment. So it's really important to work on the relationship with the director or the directress. And sometimes that means having difficult conversations or bringing up things that are uncomfortable for you, or you don't know what to do, because if you don't, the relationship will fester. So it's really important to address problems while they're small. If the way that the two of you interacted about a particular situation with a child, you thought about it and you, geez, I didn't like that, or does she think I'm this way, or does he not like the way I do this? It's important to clear that up, because if you don't, you'll think that for several months, and then you'll be gathering data and you'll say, well, there's another instance why she doesn't like the way I do this. And you start to build this wall that the other person may have never intended to build. It might have just been a misunderstanding. Or you might talk to the person and you'll find out, wow, okay, that's what she expected me to do in this situation. I'm going to do that next time. Or I have a different opinion, let's talk about it. So if you let things wait, it gets pretty bad. But if you're able to address them early, you can really make the relationship better. And I think it's hard for assistants to know, I can say this. It's okay, even though this person is superior to me or is in charge of the room, it's okay for me to say what I think. And so some people lack the courage to say it, and other people maybe don't have enough humility in knowing what they know or don't know, or being responsive to someone else's ideas. But I think that's the cause of a lot of unhappiness I've seen in other relationships between assistants and their directresses. Is something started, a bad seed was planted, and then the plant just grew and they never quite were able to get around it. It's important to be optimistic and resilient, I think, because you might have a hard day one day. I had one day where a child decided she wanted to fall on the floor pouting at least 5 times, and it really started to get to me. And that's going to happen to you. And you need to just, first of all, just be able to let it wash over you at some point and handle it the best you can, and know that you're not going to be perfect every time, and come in the next day and be excited to be with the children and be excited about your own skills and that you can figure it out. So there's a sense in which you have to be willing to make mistakes, and if what you're trying isn't working, be creative about thinking to try something different. I really love the children. It's so fun to be with them, and it's so neat to see them doing their work. You can see that they really love what they're doing, and you can see that they change and become their best selves. I feel really powerful in helping these children become the best that they can be in this environment.